My philosophy professor, who has since passed away and is very dearly missed by every student he ever had, was Professor Tom Davis, who was the philosophy professor for SUNY Ulster and is one of the most remarkable professors I've ever encountered, and whose reputation really extends beyond.
That's wild.
He was a perfect man. He was a perfect man. He looked.
That's if you study philosophy enough. Here's what happens.
Here's what happens. Just imagine.
You become a perfect man. We're all working toward it.
We're all right, but he was, man. I won't hear anything. If any of his family or friends want to tell me differently,
please. I believe you, but I don't want to know.
I don't want to. I'm sure he would agree. He would disagree with me voraciously. He looked just like Merlin from Disney's Sword in the Stone, but with a little bit of a shorter beard, but otherwise a total face match. And he had a deep Flatbush accent like Bugs Bunny.
I'd love to stay for lunch, but I seem to be all tied up this morning.
He was really incredible, and he did an amazing job. There was a lot of philosophy of religions and the philosophy, he went through the basics and then covered a lot of interesting stuff, the philosophy of leadership and different governmental models, and he was a very cool guy.
Did you feel mentorship from that relationship?
Yeah. We cornered that dude for like 30 minutes after every class.
Jeez.
You mentioned a very formative figure in your life, Professor Tom Davis.
Yeah.
What were the biggest lessons that you took away from Professor Davis?
In the eulogy I wrote for him, I said he was like Bugs Bunny, Merlin, and Buddha all rolled up into one person. And he taught classes, he taught broad surveys of like early Western and Eastern philosophy. I did a lot of philosophy of religion classes with him. What he did that I loved was he had a point of view, but when he was teaching, he was performing. And what he was performing as was every time he would explicate a philosophy, he would do it from the perspective of the culture and time that had generated it. So every time he advocated a philosophy, he spoke and sounded like someone who believed that. So he never had a condescension of being like, and these people at this time believed this. You know what I mean? It was always like, well, let me tell you about samsara.
And this was truth to someone.
This was truth to somebody. Everything he said, and he's like, of course, like Christ up on the cross, he died for our sins. He died for our sins, like everything. And he would perform it, and he would have these chalkboards that he would write words, but he only wrote words for emphasis. So by the end of a lesson, you would be like utilitarianism, deontology, circle, circle, line, Joey from Friends, line, the E equals MC squared, line over here, Jainism, you'd have all this stuff where it was like, it was so beautiful. And I think that also he was just so generous, getting pinned down for 40 minutes after every class by two 14-year-old homeschool kids in pajama pants being like, I had some thoughts about logic. And you're like, I bet you did, buddy.
Yep.
I think what I took from his classes was a belief that there was nothing dry about it. There was nothing dry in his classes. Everything was earnest and heartfelt and urgent. These were the ideas that people had about the most important questions in their life. What could be navel-gazy about this? What could be academic about this? This is the stuff of life. How do you be good? What is this? Is this for something? And so it's funny because I know that there's this attitude around philosophy of it being kind of hopelessly detached or aloof or kind of producing a certain class of person who is emotionally disaffected.
Yeah.
He was the most affected by the world, by life, by everything. And again, I look back at my work, whether it's D&D campaigns or it's a web comic or it's a screenplay or all the different stuff I've done in my life. I think that everything comes back to an early love of axiology and ethics that I learned from him. Because to me, it's like, well, what could be frivolous or trivial about how to live a good life? So yeah, I think his fingerprints are on everything I've ever done.
For somebody to imbue you with earnest excitement about something and to give you permission to say you can be very earnestly excited about this thing is, to me, the greatest gift that you can give anybody, and especially those formative ages. Now that you have the opportunity and likely are the Tom Davis to a lot of people in a certain way, how much do you take that burden or that privilege onto yourself?
teaching at UCB and teaching workshops at Wayfinder, the truth is I love teaching. I love it so much. I miss teaching, and I sometimes dream about one day being a little white-bearded old man teaching philosophy somewhere. I think that if there's any part of his life that I would aspire to try to like mimic or model in some way, there's no way to compel people. What he did was reveal to people in his class how fascinating all this was. I think there's great lessons in there for parenting as well, right? What it felt like he did in his classes was show us how much he loved this stuff. And if I could do that, then that would mean everything. And I miss him dearly. I actually have his photo and a poem from his funeral, a card from his funeral up over my desk. But by the time those years were happening, he was no longer with us.
Tom Davis would be very proud of you and the work that you have done because of things like what you just said, and that like philosophical mindset that you have not only imparted like in your work, but I feel like you have made so many people who love your work think about that in ways that they wouldn't otherwise.
That's very sweet. Let me grab something real quick. I gave a eulogy at Professor Davis's funeral. This was back in 2008. Here's Professor Davis as a young Brooklyn kid. I cannot think of a more meaningful thing to say. If I have made Professor Davis proud, then that would be the whole point. That was one of the hard things about him passing away, as many years ago as it was now, was just that when he passed, I hadn't talked to him in years, and I was in a place where I didn't feel like I had something to show, and it made me very aware that you must not wait till you feel like you have something to show, because that tomorrow is not promised. And I wish I'd gotten to talk to him again after I'd left. And I just think, I wrote in the eulogy I gave at his funeral. It's funny because I've shared something that I've tried to share before, and I think sometimes it resonates with people and other times it doesn't. But the overwhelming emotion I felt when he passed, there's obviously personal grief, and that goes and comes in waves, right? But it was a feeling of exhaustion. I felt exhausted when I heard that he had passed, because when someone is like punching above their weight class, making the world a better place, it's like seeing, to put it in like TTRPG analogy, it's like seeing a Titan go down, like seeing the standard bearer go down. There was a feeling of this guy was doing so much to light a fire in so many different people, and he was a life-changing person for so many people. This was the card given out at his funeral. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond's gift of snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the autumn's gentle rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die.